let every single Albertan know what is going on in Alberta right now, because if we ever needed to be aware of anything, it's going to be what is in this new Public Health Act, this is current as of July 29th, 2020. And I think if I show you, this is probably going to be, I don't think you're going to be able to see it. It's going to be reversed in the wrong way. But if you can see that, just so you can see what I've got in my hands. And this is a 74-page document from the province of Alberta. It's our Public Health Act. And because of COVID, this was redone. So if you go see the previous version, it looks very, very different because it doesn't have the same measures in it as it does since COVID came in. So if anybody's wondering why COVID came in, it's not about COVID, okay? It is about sweeping totalitarian measures. And what this document has in here, if it doesn't scare the living shit out of each and every one of you, then I don't even know. Maybe, I don't mean to be rude, but like, people would have to be literally brain dead if they read this and they weren't freaked out by what's in here. This is goes against human rights. This can't stand. There's got to be lawsuits. We've got to figure out how to get this overturned because it cannot.
From the time that we launched Wexit in June of last year to the time of Justin Trudeau's re-election, and to the way that the political situation has deteriorated in Alberta, and we're becoming more like Ontario, more like other parts of the country that you would never equate with Alberta. We're losing, whether it be our personal freedoms, our economic freedoms, control of our resources, control of our wealth, our finances, those sorts of things. And we've launched the Alberta 51 movement. The Alberta USA movement was launched a couple of months ago. We started our flagship campaign, the Should Alberta Join the USA campaign, and there's a fantastic response to that. We just finished up the One Nation Under God campaign to reach out to the multi-ethnic faith communities in Edmonton. So really, we've got people in this province that you wouldn't expect would support U.S. statehood, and that's where we're at right now.
You know, I'm back and forth between Alberta and the USA, and what I'm seeing all over the place is people are aligning themselves with freedom, and so naturally, all these rallies and everything, you're seeing the American flag flown, and that is because of the values. That is because it's for freedom. So to say not much of a movement in Alberta, there's not an appetite for that, I strongly disagree. There's a lot of people that they're weighing out, they're looking for solutions, and there's status quo, our politicians, that it doesn't matter if you're on the right or whoever gets in power. It's kind of a one push towards globalism. What's your thoughts on that?
I would definitely say the COVID crisis, somewhat manufactured, quite a bit overhyped. The speed of automation and technology, and how the fourth industrial revolution is kind of pushing some of this stuff, and the markets for their products are definitely, big government, and biosecurity is sort of the name of the day. I think that you definitely have a lot of personal agendas. You've got a lot of people who, again, maybe they were the popular kid in school, and maybe they were they weren't the tough kid or the smart kid sometimes. So independent thought, not necessarily welcome. But we just have to keep doing what we're doing. I've used digital billboards as a way to talk past the media. I've used that the same way Mr. Trump has used Twitter. But even in Canada, you've seen in Montreal and Vancouver, two places that you would never think, they were shouting Trump, 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 and chanting USA, USA, USA. Sort of the same sort of phenomenon we saw in Hong Kong. So for all of the, let's call it the Canadian anti-American biases that are in Canada, at the end of the day, I think when people are pressed, it is the one country that is associated with freedom. And the nice thing about Alberta is that our population is really young. We've got the right demographic curve. We've got more people, young people than older people here in this province, and we've got fantastic resources and geopolitical positions. So it really is a better partnership with the USA. And Alberta is so much more like the Midwest. It's so much more like the mountain states in the US. We're a lot more like Montana. Montana, the Dakotas, and even down to we a lot of.
Oh, you're dropping off. Oh, you're back. Okay, keep going. Pick up where you said,
Yeah, we've got
there's a lot of similarities between South Dakota.
a lot more in common with the Midwest and the mountain states for sure here.
Okay, but let's talk about realistically. We've got a lot of comparables, but how do you make this happen? And what's it going to take? And what would the U.S. Um, go along with the theme of some people?
Right. So it simply is going to take a referendum here, and we have to force that. We have to force that. We've got to get our referendum on independence, and that's just what we have to do. And we have to win that. We have to have a majority of people express their will, and simply from there, the people decide to petition the U.S. government to become the 51st state. It's really, and what it's really going to take is just more economic, political, social pain. Unfortunately, people are going to need to be a little bit more, and it is going that way. We're seeing Mr. Trudeau, his throne speech is going to be very pivotal on this Wednesday. The new green, anti-oil, anti-energy policies that are coming out. And so a lot of people are watching, and once things have to get a little bit better before it gets worse. But it's always darkest before the dawn.
So you feel this is, you've got longevity then, you haven't set an expectation, this date, this time, this is what's going to happen. Are you riding this out, or like, where are we right now?
It's the early start of the Alberta USA campaign. So once again, we've got the billboards. Everybody knows what we're doing right now. I sent you a few of those billboards, and if you Google that or do a search engine on "Should Alberta join the USA," you'll see the traction that it's been getting. And obviously whether it be anti-American or anti-Alberta media that we have in Canada, or anti-Trump media that doesn't like Mr. Trump. So we've done the first step of getting people talking about it, and now we've got to do the work to show the benefits of statehood. But again, people have to feel a lot more pain. So it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, but we have to just keep going day by day.
Mm-hmm. So will you talk a little bit about what's going on internally? You are the founder of Wexit, and now you're starting a PAC. But why did you leave Wexit?
Well,
and why did we end up with that who leave?
Yeah, I'll clarify that. I've never left Wexit. Stage one of this movement for Alberta independence was Wexit. That was stage one. Stage two is the Alberta USA movement. So Wexit itself, or the parties that comprise it, were at the federal level before they went through a name change. Wexit Canada at the federal level. The provincial level, there's Wexit British Columbia. There is the Wild Rose Independence Party of Alberta and the Buffalo Party of Saskatchewan. So those parties exist, and
okay,
and they have mandates. So I'm definitely a lot now that all the hard work's been done to get those parties established. Is now I've redoubled my focus back on Alberta, and we've launched the Alberta USA Foundation now to really focus on just simply what's best for Alberta.
And so, how do you determine next steps? Do you decide it on your own? Are you looking for people to join? What if somebody's watching tonight and they want more information on what they're hearing?
Go visit our website, www.ab for Alberta, so www.ab51 PAC Public Action Committee.com. So visit that website, take a look around, get an idea. This is it's Albertans alone that have been put this together and are doing this.
Mhm.
And again, any support, any way you'd like to support, all the options are there. Learn a little bit more. Learn a little bit more about our situation here in Alberta, and there's not much difference between an Albertan and anybody in the states that I just mentioned.
Well, and also if we start to, look in the United States at what Donald Trump is saying and his administration is saying, a top foreign issue to them is protecting religious rights and freedom. So that is under attack in Canada. That's a reality that what we're seeing unfold in our province and the just asinine, rules and is a real attack on our rights and freedoms. And he has been, his administration, Mike Pompeo, Vice President Pence as well, they are on the forefront of saying, they're not afraid of the fight. And that is the goal. It's a top thing. So I take that seriously. And I think if Albertans are watching this and they're saying, how do we get the attention of the United States? Okay, you can protest, but you can't go to church. This is a big deal. And this is happening in right the neighbor of the United States, so they care, they're watching. And can you touch on that? Give us some meat and potatoes here of what we need to do. I mean, if people are liking what they're hearing out of you, get us excited. Tell us what to do next.
Well, probably soon enough, you're going to see some billboards in Montana near the Sweetgrass sign saying "Now entering the 51st state." Now entering Alberta, the 51st state. You might do something like that. You probably shouldn't put that past me, but I would say that we will be tailoring our message, focusing our message a lot more in the freedom loving folks. If you go, we've got online store and we've got T-shirts that say "Manifest Destiny 2.0," but really, yeah, is that integration and whether it be religious rights, whether it be energy security, geopolitical positioning, a strong, secure, engaged North America to deal with emerging, continued threats like China, like Russia, again, religious rights and freedoms. So you're going to see that messaging coming soon. And again, the best thing to do, follow us. It's we'd like to have, we'd like to be tomorrow today, but it's just one day at a time, one step at a time. And that next step right now, you're gonna see some of that messaging in the US soon.
Okay, good. I wanna give you the floor. What do you want Albertans to know, specifically leaders? There are leaders that are listening. They may hide behind avatars, but this matches them. So we're talking to them tonight. What do you want them to hear? Are you pushover? Are you, how far are you going to take this?
Yeah. When I talk to my neighbors who've been out of work for any given time, when we look at the suicides, the domestic abuse, the alcoholism, the breakups, the divorces, because of the economic situation, the stripping of people's rights and freedoms and whatnot. And simply put, you're going to watch Alberta walk away from Confederation. That's going to happen. So if you're a politician, a conservative politician in Alberta, a conservative leader, start to get out of your bubble. Get out of your bubble and get talking to people. You're going to see this happen because it's the only solution to people's problems. So you decide where you want to be. To the small businesses or to the business leaders and whatnot, you're going to see 100 million to $200 million flood this province in terms of investment, and because we are so seriously economically underdeveloped. We need that American ingenuity, know-how, workforce, everything. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time, really, because this country, Canada, to maintain their standard of living with the mass retirements, all those people who didn't have as many kids in Ontario and Quebec, baby boomers who are retiring right now, the drain on the medical services and the tax revenue.
He's back.
I'm back. How's the connection right now, Val?
It's perfect. It's perfect.
Oh,
So I want to hand the floor over to you. Okay, so let's jump right back into what you were sharing before we lost you.
Yeah. So we're talking about the inside of it, where the politicians aren't listening, and that's a normal thing. Um, and all I think we're again at that pivotal moment, because we have lost. It takes Alberta, it takes Canada. We're behind the curve somewhat in we're behind the curve somewhat when it comes to, if you look at, say, U.S. presidents, right? And you had Bill Clinton. Well, or actually, I'll take it a step further back, or a little bit forward. Is Stephen Harper was our version of George Bush, and Justin Trudeau was our version of Barack Obama. And I think now, just the way the cycles go, if you see now the cycle of populism, again, regular people dissatisfied with the political class. Everybody's sort of looking for their Donald Trump right now. And I think people are looking in the wrong places sometimes, and I think, the big thing is that Donald Trump he's an outsider. He's a businessman. He's a builder. He's a creator. He's not a politician. He was an entertainer, and definitely had a connection entertaining, blue collar people and regular people for a long time. And I think the success that we've got, and the guerrilla marketing that we use for that. I mean, my background is as a policeman, as a reserve officer, and I've just sort of mixed that with my business background and my training to really cut through the noise and just do things that people aren't willing to do. And that really is the difference. The problem when it is grassroots, everybody's begging for the grassroots to do something, but the problem is human nature. You're looking for kind of that popular person, or that person who's going to make you feel safe. Unfortunately, right now we're entering an economic cycle and a geopolitical, just a time where it is really a perfect storm, where the legs are kind of falling out of under what we thought democracy was, what we thought Alberta was, or Canada, or whatever the fact may be. And people are going to be looking for those solutions, and those who are going to give it to them, as the fear of, again, big government control. The there's got to be a market for all these biosecurity products that are coming out, and COVID seems to sort of be the perfect storm for that. And the politicians we have don't either don't have the answers for it, or B, with our party centric systems, we don't have the checks and balances that you have in the United States, and you're so fortunate for that. And again, the wisdoms of those who crafted the Constitution, and again, that wisdom is definitely held. So it really just is that business decision for us to join. Our conservative politicians, I mean, we see it all the time, is they're just completely out of touch, and either they're unable or unwilling to offer solutions. And those who would are muzzled by the party system. You elect your governors in the US, you elect your presidents, you elect your senators here. You vote for a party, and it just happens to be the person who's most popular, or the one who's, who the least amount of dirt on social media is dug up. Or in the case of, say, Justin Trudeau and the blackface, you've got a complicit media. So it's going to boil down, unfortunately, to bread and butter issues in this province. It's got to get worse before it gets better. But with the Alberta USA Fund and the foundation and the work that we're doing, we designed it and timed it so when it really hits, it's already there. I use the example, everybody laughed at Noah when he was building the ark. Well, they laughed up until the flood came. By God's grace, we won't be shutting the door on anybody who's looking for the USA option. It is a little bit of a different analogy, but it is analogous somewhat to what we're dealing with here.
What I sense in talking to you and looking at you face to face here is a confidence. You're unshakable, and much like Noah, God gave him a vision, and he didn't waver. He didn't build half a boat. you know, he built a life-saving you know, raft that was able to change the world, right? Like when you look at, if he wouldn't have said yes, what would have happened, right? Like God looks for that one with a heart that's going to carry his message. So, you know, you feel, let's talk about that. Let's go there.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
why,
I
like, this is a pretty big deal. What you're doing is you're changing potentially, like, let's be realistic, if things go your way, you're changing history. So, you know, that's a pretty God-sized thing to be dropped on a person. Walk us through that.
right. I wouldn't. If I thought that I was changing history, I would say so. I think a more apt biblical, again, whether it be Noah, who God spoke to directly, or whether we look in Chronicles, and I don't get to mix politics and faith too often. So this is a rare opportunity. I appreciate this, Val. Is I think it'd be more like the men of Issachar when it says, you know, it was the men of Issachar who knew the times and knew
Mm-hmm.
what to do. And again, these are just the headwinds that are coming. It's a matter of reading it. I was right with Wexit. Again, I could be wrong. I could be completely wrong, but I don't think that I am. And this is the option that really solves our problems. And the nice piece is that from a cultural perspective, from a demographic perspective, for a geopolitical perspective, Alberta fits with the USA in the way that many other parts of Canada, it would be pretty tough. And you know, for me, let's say even from a conservative perspective or a faith perspective, you know, I've got a lot to be grateful for. I became a born again believer a little bit later in life when I turned 30. And
So what does that mean? Walk us through what that means and how that impacts your, you know, how you conduct yourself and
okay,
your
yeah,
politics.
yeah, it's huge. It really is huge. We still have a culture in Alberta that, you know, we the culture is still a little bit different where we don't openly, you know, they say mixing politics and religion and stuff like that. But I think, you know, whether it be free markets where, you know, we're innocently going to market to try to sell products to compete against the Chinese, the Russians, the Arabs who play dirty tricks, or and you know they play rough, or we think that, you know, the standard political way of doing things or being nice and being agreeable and you know works, or we'll just be social, you know, we'll talk on the internet, or we'll be keyboard warriors, or those kinds of things. One of the big things is you got to get out there. You really got to get out there, and you got to be with people, and you have to have that connection. And last year was a lot of doing that. It was a lot of traveling around, and I'm not going to compare myself to, you know, the Jesus's ministry for those 3 years. It was draining for sure, that experience, but it's something that we had to do. We're seeing our future slip away, but from a faith-based, from a morals perspective, we're able to be run over because, you know, we have this, oh, let's just focus on the economy. Let's just, again, the economy is very, very important. Jobs are very, very important. But let's just focus on the economy, and let's just let all this other stuff slide. Well, we're run over by socialists. It's like the word of God says
Mhm.
very clearly. Those who, you know, though he says the blessings and the curses are, you know, we'll flee. You know, you'll flee when nobody's chasing you, or one will put 1,000 to flight. And so this is a time where we really get to say, hey, there's a values piece to this as well. We can focus on the things like parents' rights, abortion, those kinds of things, which are fifth rail issues in Alberta for sure. But the reality is, you know, why are we paying for other people's choices?
Hmm.
You know, like
Yeah.
we're not buying the road, and so you got to kind of find that mix. It's like Jesus said, be shrewd as a serpent but innocent as a dove. So you got to kind of find your mix as to where it works. And I think from the wherever you're not willing to throw somebody in jail, you need to have a libertarian approach and simply, you know what, we don't buy the movie tickets, we don't buy the popcorn, we don't buy the meal, we don't buy the roses, we don't buy the condoms. So why are we paying for it when it goes the other way? Pay for it yourself. My wallet, my choice. Right? My wallet, my choice.
You've got a point there. You've got a point there, right? And how many times? I mean, and in Alberta, we have no laws. It's unlimited. It's free for
Yeah.
all. You want to have one abortion, 5, 10, 15,
Right.
whatever. You know,
But let's look at it. Let's look at it, and I think part of the piece and part of what we have to solve, because our values mixed with our policies. It's not about pushing religion on anybody, but okay, I'll go by
Mhm.
your rules. I'll go by your rules. Is we say we support our veterans. Well, an abortion costs $1,300 per surgery,
Hmm.
and we say, oh well, we don't like private health care, and we don't like waiting lines. Our seniors can't get knee replacements or hip replacements. People with leukemia are dying on the waiting list. We don't like private, so we don't have enough health care to go around. People are paying out of pocket. They've been paying their whole lives into the Canadian medical system, then go out of pocket to fly to the States,
Yeah.
to the Mayo Clinic, and taking that money with them, or they're dying waiting in line. But if you
So
have
let's
an
talk. That's the narrative. Right there. What you're touching on has been a false narrative that needs to be disrupted, and it's anti-American. It's propaganda, is what it is. And we really saw that hit in the 80s, into the 90s in our education system. And that's why you have the narrative of people that constantly have this impression that is wrong of what healthcare in the United States looks like and what it costs. And
it,
so that was a counter psyop that actually
right,
worked on Canada.
I
We
would
have to
say,
address.
yeah, I would say we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We just talked about abortion. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are some benefits to a public system. For instance, you've medical providers don't have as high overhead or administrative costs trying to sue insurers who decide that they're not going to pay. Here, they just go to Alberta Health Services, the single payer side. You do. I worked in homeless shelters. You do have people who are literally can't pay getting health care, and I mean that's something for me. If you look at purchasing power or economies of scale, I'm okay with giving my tax money for that type of health care. What I'm not cool with and what I've seen is money going into mental health that goes into welfare payments to and people that they just blow it. And I've seen it. The homeless shelters are empty for 3 days when the monthly mental health checks come out, because it gets all blown on booze, drugs, prostitutes, and hotel rooms. They call it Mardi Gras here. Every single month,
What the government grows. I mean, the government's concept and design is to be bigger and to take over. So the less
Mhm.
government involvement on
Yeah.
all levels of my life, including healthcare and every part of it, I want primary decision making. I'm not looking
Absolutely.
for a parental
100%.
figure.
If like you say, and again, it's going to be Albertans. One of the great parts about being able to join the United States is each state has the ability to design their own healthcare. Every state's got the ability to design their own healthcare. And if we want to have basic Medicare for people who are poor or widows who don't have whatever the heart issues are, I do believe in remembering the poor, and that, but we got to qualify who the qualify and quantify who the poor are, because it's a lot less than big government would make you believe that there is. So we have to dispel these myths. We have to start having honest discussions again. And what it takes for honest discussions to happen is for people who are unafraid of the social consequence. People who are There's lots of politicians, there's lots of people, there's lots of business owners who believe the same things as me. Like I'm saying popular stuff, but they're too afraid to say it by I would say the socialization. You'd call the psyops. I'd call the socialization into being quiet. Don't say that thing. Let's just focus on the economy. Let's just focus on getting power before the next election. And as a policeman, or a soldier, you deal with bullets and bombs and that kind of stuff. So, what people's opinion of me or anybody, it doesn't really mean much, but I'm still solving people's problems. And that's what it's going to be at the end of the day when people are anxious and they don't have jobs. The guaranteed basic income Trudeau's talking about bringing in. Where's that money going to come from? It's going to come from Alberta. So it's not it isn't so much the discomfort in the position I'm taking is simply the waiting. It's like you've already got to the top of the mountain, or you've done the button hook. You're waiting. You broke away from the defenders. You're waiting for the pass. You're waiting to catch the pass or the touchdown, and it's just that waiting and that feeling of being comfortable, being comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's not something that, again, the politicians who were maybe the mouthy kid in school, or maybe they were the popular kid in school, or the nice kid in school. Well, you know what? Maybe I was the smart kid or the tough kid, maybe a combination of both. I simply, it's simply about solving the problems. And the nice thing is, it's people aren't going to have a choice. Fortunately and unfortunately for me, they're not going to have a choice. They're not, but they're not going to go down with this ship. They're going to act in their own self-interest, and it's going to result in a more secure, strong, and engaged North America. Uh, there's as many benefits to America for Alberta joining the union as there is to Alberta. It's going to be a great partnership.
Okay, so you use the word partnership. Is partnership in play? Um, how big are we getting? Because my sense is I've heard both sides. I've heard the establishment put out a real, they are attempting to destroy your name, do their typical, oh, don't talk to him, don't associate with that guy, which anybody that is seeing the world for what it is, seeing Alberta for what it is right now, they're drawn to that. It's like, okay, as soon as I had the establishment knocking on my door saying that Peter Downing, I knew that Peter Downing was doing something, and that something is disrupting the narrative. So
Mm-hmm.
you know you don't really need 100,000 yes people. All it takes is 5 people that are going to stand up and not be pushed over. And it kind of looks like you've got the foundations there of some movement. You've mentioned many different parties that are they're under Wexit, that are they going to walk forward with your plan?
Part of building something is knowing the time to let go of something. Whether it's building a ship or building different vehicles, and it's time. You got to let other people drive it. And we recruited some people who took the movement to the next level in terms of name brand recognition. Some of those people have worked, and some of those people haven't worked so much. And you've seen the same thing with Mr. Trump, and he had to get rid of a lot of people. Now, this isn't so much that I'm getting rid of anybody. There's a few people I've had to fire, over the year and a half we've been doing this, and some good people that we brought on. And really, ego is the killer. It's pride that goes before the fall. And I think my accomplishments in this is taking, and by the way, it wasn't 5 people, it was only 3. It was only 2 other people I was blessed to run into, to connect.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I just love how you are so called to just stand and just, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. And that's what it's all about. It's so refreshing. That's the
Oh, thank
sign.
you, Val.
That's a sign of a real leader, is when you can stand. And I've said since day one, I would always stand by the one that's telling the truth. And I think
Right.
I'm just a reflection, right? I'm just an echo of our largest conservative vote block, of being a mom and a wife. And so there's so many of me out there that are watching this, that you just, like, that can't be faked, and it's just refreshing. So keep
Well,
going.
the reality, I mean, I'm 38 years old, is, whether it's a longer or shorter time, I've got 40 to 50 years left on this earth, and then it's, we face our maker, right?
Isn't
And
that awesome? I love it.
yeah, so it's, the fame, the name, whatever it is, naked we come into this world, and naked we leave. So it really is about, you have to act with the heart. I think what fuels me, and boils down to it, is that simple gospel message of love of neighbor. I don't really know how to do anything else, and I bring my aggression and again my ruthlessness when it comes to ego, and people who are putting themselves before what needs to be done. I never have claimed to be a nice person, but by God's grace, He deems me to be a good person. Again, because of His mercies, not because of anything I've done. And we recruited some people who took the movement to the next level in terms of name brand recognition. some of those people have worked and some of those people haven't worked so much. And you see the same thing with Mr. Trump, and he had to get rid of a lot of people. Now, this isn't so much that I'm getting rid of anybody. There's a few people I've had to fire, over the year and a half we've been doing this, and some good people that we brought on. Really, ego is the killer. It's pride that goes before the fall, and I think my accomplishments in this is taking, and by the way, it wasn't 5 people, it was only 3. It was only 2 other people I was blessed to run into, to connect.
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I just love how you are so called to just stand and just, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. And that's what it's all about. It's so refreshing. That's the
Well, thank
sign.
you, Val.
That's a sign of a real leader, is when you can stand. And I've said since day one, I would always stand by the one that's telling the truth. And I think
Right.
I'm just a reflection, right? I'm just an echo of our largest conservative vote block of being a mom and a wife. And so there is so many of me out there that are watching this that you just, like, that can't be faked, and it's just refreshing. So keep
Well,
going.
the reality, I mean, I'm 38 years old, is, whether it's a longer or shorter time, I've got 40 to 50 years left on this earth, and then it's, we face our maker, right?
Isn't
And
that awesome? I love it.
yeah, so it's, the fame, the name, whatever it is, naked we come into this world, and naked we leave. So it really is about, you have to act with the heart. I think what fuels me and boils down to it is that simple gospel message of love of neighbor. I don't really know how to do anything else, and I bring my aggression and again my ruthlessness when it comes to ego, and people who are putting themselves before what needs to be done. I never have claimed to be a nice person, but by God's grace, He deems me to be a good person. Again, because of His mercies, not because of anything I've done. But yeah, this is just sort of an outworking of that. And I what I've done at the strategic level, I've been blessed with the best digital media self-taught fella. This guy is just a monster genius. Nobody would ever know him. His name's Eric Wall, in Saskatchewan, and Jenny Walker, who really executed a lot of what we did. And these were tireless, selfless people who didn't seek the spotlight, and it only worked because there was no ego in this. I mean, we've got our own quirks and faults and things like that, but yeah, it really was only able to happen. And I would say, everything's because of God, but, or I should say, and the personal mix in that is really the ego. But this is what I've learned in politics, Val, in the short time I've been in it, at least in any kind of, spotlight or anything like that, is the ego is the biggest killer. You've got some fantastic people who would otherwise do some amazing things, but it's their ego, their desire for power. For me, it doesn't matter. I put my picture, you've seen the billboard that I sent you. We just finished the In God We Trust campaign, and some people are griping, why did you put your face on that? Well, number one, very clearly we have to identify that this is an Alberta led movement. This isn't
Yeah.
us being annexed by the USA. Number
Yeah.
two, and what with Wexit is, the buck stops with me in terms of the results for this. There's a lot of
Mhm.
people who want to comment, but I'm the only one responsible for the results of this.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
number three is, we've seen, I've told you, I now have, other than 4 of my own children, I have a few political children, and these are these parties. We saw one of them take a huge hit. We seen ego get in the way, and they changed it from Wexit Canada, which had international recognition. They called it the Maverick Party. I mean, you would think that it was a sabotage, and lots of people are saying that. Uh, and I mean, tone deaf, or I think it's tone deafness and
Mhm.
ridiculous ego, ridiculous embarrassment, and people who build it are gutted. But what it does do, in a strange way, it gives me the platform and the moral, I guess the moral
Mhm.
back
Mhm.
to say, we will never ever turn the Alberta USA movement over ever to a political insider ever.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at what happened.
Well,
So
you stand on your own 2 feet, right? Like that's
yeah,
what you're essentially saying is like you're gonna stand on your own 2 feet, and I mean that makes you pretty bulletproof when ego's not in there. You're standing now and you're saying this is the deal, this is what it is, and I
yeah,
like that. But I do want to touch on you mentioned how Wexit, as an example, was, rebranded and it looked like a sabotage almost. But I mean, venturing into politics from a background of mainstream media and, very involved and influencer in my community, I was totally out of my realm coming into that environment, and it's disloyal, it's dishonest, and it's cutthroat, and there is an agenda, there's a spiritual stronghold that is at play, that I think when people really stop and look at what we're dealing with in Alberta and in Canada, you can start to see those roots being, there's fear. There's fear to stand up. There's lack of conviction. There's lack of morals. And there really is a corruption there that if we as individuals don't start identifying values and standards and holding these people to account. So, prime example being, if you start peeling the layers back on a politician, who supports, what small interest is supporting them? Who do they say they are in front of the camera? Or how do they, manipulate on social issues and then turn around and go exactly opposite? When that starts reaching the people, so when people demand a better quality, that's when we're really going to start to see, I think a bigger movement faster. Like that's how we could turn it up, is to model that, to model, what you're doing. You're standing on your own 2 feet. You're saying whether I've got one or three or five or 100,000, it's kind of irregardless to you. You've got a plan, you know what you're doing. And again, that's like bulletproof politics right there, I think.
yeah. Yeah, it's it's sort of a blue ocean thing because no, it's one of those things that I'm comfortable taking unpopular positions because I mean you see it right, the Noah analogy, the Noah's Ark analogy I think is a really good analogy. But getting onto what with the dishonesty and the corruption, that kind of stuff. Do you remember? I mean, we look at what's going on in American politics right now, and you're not going to hear me bash. I'm a Republican. I would be a kind of a middle of the road Republican, right on most issues, a little bit concerned for blue collar workers and working standards and overtime and stuff like that on the labor issue. But I'm pretty right of center on everything else. Um, do you remember though years ago when there was a politician? I think it was John Edwards, Democrat fella, and big scandal. He was a Democrat, and the big scandal was that he cheated on his wife.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Yeah.
a scandal then. Think about now. I mean, people will be like, that's par for the course. And so that right there, I think, is in a nutshell, is that if you're willing to be dishonest to those who to basically to your best friend, and I mean, I don't want to pick on Mr. Edwards, but if you're a politician and you're willing to cheat on your wife, you're willing to cheat on the voters. And I said this when I was a cop: if you're willing to cheat on your wife, or you're willing to brutalize, you betray your closest person, you're willing to betray those you're sworn to protect.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one desire before any partisan or policy issue is honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Honesty is the
Mm-hmm.
number one thing that the voter, other than people who've got their agendas, but
Yeah.
the regular voters are looking primarily for honesty. And
Mm-hmm.
if you look into my life, go for it. Go right ahead. Everything that I said is a public record, and any of my issues that I went through in my own personal life, it is public record, and I've given a public response to it. Go for it. And if it doesn't affect if you trying to attack me, if somebody trying to attack my reputation or whatever, number one, if it doesn't affect me, number two, if my brand of politics transcends the schoolyard, ooh, I don't like that guy, you know, he had tuna for lunch. um these are bread and butter issues. We're talking about having a job,
Mm-hmm.
providing solutions so you have a job and you can feed your family. And when you look at me and you want, and those issues will come up, whether it be, you know, whether it be my personal views on abortion, um, parents' rights. Again, those are the two things that come up. I just looking from a public policy perspective. Who's got control of their kids and paid for
Mm-hmm.
your own surgeries? Um, it isn't rocket science. So
Mm-hmm.
people are like, yeah, that makes sense.
I
Is what it
think the
is.
issues, though, what you're speaking of, I get that, but I think the issues in Alberta especially run a little deeper than that.
Oh, yeah,
Deeper in the
this
sense,
a small thing.
right, and moral, like you're talking about moral things that matter. I mean, this show is called Honest Conversation, so you're preaching
Well,
to the choir. But I'm
COVID.
talking.
COVID.
Go
I'll
ahead.
give you a perfect example right now is the COVID crisis.
Hmm.
One of the politicians in Medicine Hat, government party, Drew Barnes. You know, he's one of the few. He's one of the few who's actually, you know, speaking out and representing his constituents. The fella has gone on public record saying that by week 3 of the COVID crisis, the Jason Kenney government knew, and these were his words, the lethality and the transmittability of the virus were wildly exaggerated. Okay, I'll repeat those words. Wildly exaggerated. The economic devastation from the shutdowns, from the lockdowns, from the gaslighting people. I mean, if this virus escaped a level 4 military lab in China, your leopard print mask isn't going to do anything about it.
You're non-medical grade. You're that Jason
I
Kennedy gave 4 million of them, right?
you know, I have read the studies of the peer reviewed PhD studies on that, both before and after, and I won't get into that too much because it's a little bit technical. But I'll tell you, I did some contract work in seniors' homes at the height of the height when all these seniors were dying, supposedly. I worked there for 12-hour days, week after week after week. I didn't see one senior rush to hospital with a breathing issue. Not one. Not
Hmm.
one.
Well,
So
and
we accept this because I think part of it is as conservatives, especially, we don't know what to do. We're afraid of being branded a certain way, and if
mhm,
we know something is wrong, but we don't know exactly what or why. And I think that's the piece of it is this big. It's a big knowledge gap inside having inside information. It's like our politicians are car salesmen. They know the price of what's going on, or at least one of them does, and the rest of the MLAs and the rest of the politicians are just like the salesman on the floor. And we've got our premiers and our prime
mhm.
ministers as the party leaders, or like the sales manager, and that's probably a pretty good analogy for that.
That's really good. I appreciate that. And but I mean, I just want to bring it back to common sense because you can't put a price tag on common sense. And you've mentioned how a leopard print mask really does diddly. Let's talk about the $4 million face coverings that right on the tag said this is non-medical grade.
Yeah,
And
a
Jason Kenny had
non-medical
those
product.
handed out.
Yeah, non-medical product to deal with a medical issue. And you know, when I run around, I don't wear a mask. I don't wear a mask. I won't wear a mask, and I'm not going to. This isn't Saudi Arabia. I'm not wearing a face covering. And I teach my kids. You know, I teach my kids the same thing. And like I said, I'm not putting any judgment on anybody because there's a lot of fear. The majority of people, they do it just because it's been socialized, and the government documents that have come out from Alberta
Mhm,
Health Services say that, you know, non-medical masks are meant to socialize people to mask wearing. and
mhm,
and we can get into the technical issues. We can get into the technical issues of you know, why this is going on. And I really think it's like vaccines. It's more, there's people who've got money invested in the technology that they're selling to solve the problem that COVID creates. So this is It's fear. There's only two human impulses. You talk about the spiritual side of it, and like Jesus said, Satan's kingdom is divided, but it's divided along these two lines: fear and greed. And there's different levels of it. So when we're dealing with the human experience, the human problem, and the nasty side of politics, manifest what we're seeing manifest a lot more is fear and greed. And if you know how to deal with fear and greed, then that's 80% of the problem solved.
That's interesting. So, okay, that's a big thing you've just dropped there. You're kind of calling on perhaps Christians that know what to do, how to take hold of that fear and greed. You're going to pray, you're going to stand united, you're going to break that off, right? That's what you
Oh,
do.
I'll step outside politics a little bit more. And again, Deuteronomy 28 is a great example of the differences when God's people, obey him, and we see the blessings, and they disobey and have the curses. Two biggest things I'll tell this right now in the churches: the men got to drop the pornography. That just has to stop. The level of just it's got to stop. You're going to see, your willingness to watch somebody else's child be degraded that way. Don't expect good things for your own, or your own
Oh,
marriage.
okay, okay. So talk now, because pornography is, I mean, it's a destroyer for life. It's coming in children at 8, 10 years old. They're being impacted for life. So there are men that are watching, and pornography destroys lives. It destroys marriages. It destroys families. It destroys relationships. But we need to tell them how. We need to say there is hope. There is a
Yeah,
way out.
yeah,
So
I can say
freedom,
that about
there is.
my own life, and it's been what are we now? 2020. I repented in 2012, and it was just recognizing at the end of the day, it just hit me. I'm going to hell. That's all there is to it. And I was a believer. I was in seminary at the time. I was in seminary, and it was literally God saved me from this. It was my Psalm 51, snot and tears out of my face, and God honored that. And
So
King.
what does that mean? Repent means you said no more and you changed your life? Or what happened?
I would say this. It just goes to very clearly. Those of us who are in bondage to Satan, you got to understand how we become Christians. How we. I mean, I could get into theology. I did ministry for 3 years, and I do miss it. The teaching, the preaching side of it.
Well, we're loving it. We're loving it, aren't we,
Yeah,
guys?
yeah.
This is
It's one of
awesome.
those things. Is we this idea that you're either going to pick up a Bible and you're going to be fine. I say it starts with confess your sins to one another. And if you and I speak to men on this issue, and I've got experience helping men deal with all sorts of, whether it's addiction. Usually it's the common sexual stuff, but the lust stuff. But it could be substance, it could be addiction, it could be fear, it could be a lot of different things. Um,
So you're
but
talking about what gets inside your mind and controls you in
inside your
impulse.
mind, inside your heart, inside your inside your psyche. And it starts with, find somebody who you trust, who don't throw your pearls to swine. Find somebody who's worthy of your trust, not somebody who's going to co-opt or enable you. Don't pick somebody who's worse off than you when it comes to self-control issues.
Mhm.
um, but if you can't control your, wonder why the politicians control you. You can't even control yourself. We can't control ourselves. So of course the politicians are going to control us. Of course the media, whatever the case may be. But the point is, if you're not, again, I use the analogy, not the analogy, the true statement is that if you're willing to cheat on your spouse, you're willing to cheat on the voters. And if you're willing to betray your closest partner, you're willing to betray the public. Well, same sort of thing in the churches. Starts with the pastor, absolutely 100% starts with the pastor. And the pastor's got to have conversations on these common issues where, you confess your sins to one another. And you got to have a strong core of elders, because the pastor's going to get burned out. So you've got to have that. And
So you're
And that's
talking about cleaning the junk out, like really taking the layer off. Let's if you want to walk in victory, you want to walk in liberty, like real freedom where you're free of what you described on the inside that affected your heart, your mind, your soul, your psyche. You walked away from it, and what happened?
I didn't walk away from it. God freed me from it. Christ snapped those spiritual chains because I recognized that I was a wretch, and I asked him to. I begged him to, and he did.
I love that. It's you don't move until you get results, and that's what people are starved for, is they want real. And this is politics, this is life, this is everything. It's just like me. I don't tell me about it. Don't just show me about it. I need to be there. I need to see it and feel it and experience it. And I think everybody's, we're wired like that. We're human. We're not AI. So,
Yeah.
What you're saying, if there's men that are watching that are like, that's me, that is my story, and I want freedom. I want to get free of that. Can you talk about this? Will you come back on and
Yeah,
do
I'll
a
tell you what I'll
follow-up?
even do. I'll tell you what I'll even do is let me give you my email. I'll send you my email, and if there's anybody who's looking for that, easy, just message me personally, peter.downing at my Proton Mail account. Peter.downing at